Has it finally happened? Have the fans finally gone too far? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 211 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
Let's start off with some good news because we have a new trailer for the Borderlands movie, which looks pretty fun. It looks very much like the video game, and you could tell from the trailer itself that there is a combination of Mad Max meets Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, that's a good description.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never played the video game, but...
Neither have I, but I am familiar with the game, and I know that there were some people that were concerned about Kevin Hart being in it because some people feel like his humor and Borderlands humor is not exactly the same thing. But you know, I'm willing to give it a chance.
Yeah, with Jumanji.
Yeah.
That was a video game
Right.
in the mythos of Jumanji. Yeah, he's an actor. I think he can adapt.
The movie looks like fun. It certainly looks like something I'm going to go see. We have coming out next week, we had Dune Part 2.
Yes.
People are really excited about that. You can tell that it's going to be good because they've already released the embargo. This is not we're going to release it the day before. The critics are already weighing in. Right now, I think on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like at 97%.
Really? Oh, that's amazing.
A lot of people like the first movie, and with Part 2 coming out, they re-released Part 1 in the theaters, which I think is a good idea because when Part 1 came out, we were still in the midst of COVID, and so most people watched it at home and didn't get a chance to see it in the theaters.
Gives you a chance to catch up.
Yeah, give you a chance to catch up if you hadn't seen it, and if you have seen it but wanted to see what it would look like in the big screen, you get the opportunity to do that, and it did very well.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I don't think, well, maybe Barbie did this, but the fashion at the premieres was such a huge deal. Everything that the actors were wearing, and not just the women, what the men were wearing, it was such a big deal, and they all looked amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Very sci-fi, very Zendaya looked like she stepped right out of Metropolis. It was very cool, and I don't know if this was hopefully pushing them towards a Oscar nod for for costumes, but that's a 40-year-old gripe that I've said over and over again, even on our podcast, that I want a sci-fi movie to win best costumes, but I'm excited about seeing the movie.
We have a week to go because it comes out March 1st, so it's a week from this. Today is Thursday when we're recording. So 1 week from today, it will be out in theaters.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm glad to see people getting excited about movies again. With that and Deadpool 3, people are really excited about that. But I do have to talk about an existential crisis that I've been dealing with over the last week, which started with me finally going to see Madam Web. And when I say I had an existential crisis, it's probably not going to be the one that you think that I'm about to say.
Okay.
The movie, I will say, has earned its reputation.
Okay.
It's not only obvious that no one in the movie or the studios really cared about this thing or thought that much about it, even on a technical aspect.
Phoned in.
Yeah, phoned in, certainly. Although, to be fair to Dakota Johnson, if she was directed to act that way, then what can you do? If that was the delivery they wanted as an actor, that's what you give them.
Yes.
So, honestly, I can't really lay this at her feet to say that she was a terrible actor, at least in this. I don't know if this was a choice that she made or one she was asked to make. There's no way to know.
Okay.
But I can definitely tell you that the editing was wonky. There were some places in there where it felt like some frames were missing. There were some jumps where literally there was one scene where, and you've seen it in the trailer, where she's crawling into this upside down vehicle. And literally it cuts to her being on the other side working on the seatbelt. Just like it wasn't even a cut to somebody else and then back to her. It just jumped. So again, even the editing was wonky. With that all being said, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was going into this to see the movie, of course, is I wanted to know if what people were saying were true. And again, it's turn on YouTube or go on the internet and you can see everybody is ragging on this movie, talking about not just the movie itself, but the fact that it was probably the first movie where you could actually see it lose money in real time. Because people who had bought advance tickets saw the reviews, heard about it, and then returned them. And so a lot of these theaters that have reserved seats, you could
refresh the website.
Yeah, you refresh the website.
And it would free up seats.
And you would see seats just appearing. So you could literally see the movie losing money in real time. And I thought, especially with how screwed up this movie is supposed to be, first of all, I wanted to know for myself. But also I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I could talk you into going? Let's really see how geek-colored those glasses are. Let's put that to the test. Okay. Wouldn't it be funny to see if there is actually a movie out there so bad that not even your geek-colored glasses could justify it? Wouldn't that be funny? And then I went and watched the movie and then thought to myself, no.
Can't do that.
No, that wouldn't be funny. Because it's, first of all, dragging you in to watch a movie that you may not like. What's the fun of that for anybody? And honestly, what more are we going to say about this movie that isn't all over the internet? Mm-hmm. And so I thought, no, I'm not going to jump in and talk about the movie. I don't think I really have anything to add to the discussion. But then something else happens. Chris Stuckman, who is a reviewer on YouTube and a well-known reviewer, and a great reviewer, I think, because he makes movies. He's working on a movie now, so he understands the process. And I've said it before, there's a difference between somebody who knows about how movies are made and does a review than somebody who just gives their opinion. Mm-hmm. And so I value a lot of what he has to say about movies. And he decided he wasn't going to do a review of Madam Web for pretty much the same reason why I wasn't. He said, there's no point in just slamming this movie. Everybody knows it's bad. What's the point of it? And so he did talk about, in that video, he talked about how we got in this situation with Hollywood. How did this happen? How did a movie like this get put out? What's going on? Is there some way it can be fixed? And he got dragged on the internet for that video.
Wow.
Because people were saying, look, if you're going to be a reviewer, you have to be willing to talk about movies that you don't like. You don't get to pick and choose what movies you talk about. If it's bad, you have to go out and say that it's bad. And I'm going to humbly disagree with all of that because, again, I felt the same way that Chris felt about it. What more are you going to be able to say about this movie that's intelligent, that's going to add to the conversation? What's there to say? It was obviously a movie that no one seemed to have faith in, including the studio. They put out one trailer. They don't put out a second one, don't really advertise it. And there's really nothing to say about the film at all, except maybe we can speculate why did they put the film out? Why didn't they pull it? But that's just really just speculation. We can make guesses about it, but it's not like we really know for sure. And I've heard some really crazy speculations from a bunch of different places that, again, you can't prove any of it. You don't know. And some of it is pretty nasty and pretty toxic. And I don't want to give that a whole lot of air. But it has made me think about the relationship that we as fans have with Hollywood and have had for a while. Because I've been talking about movies online for a long time. And you have with me. And I've talked about movies with friend of the show, Kevin Pauly. Actually, I was talking to Kevin a little bit yesterday. And he had said something that I'd heard other people say that makes an awful lot of sense. And I feel like has a lot to do with what's going on these days when it comes to Hollywood movies, which is the people who are the roughest on any IP, on any movie, are the fans of that movie. Mm-hmm. No one's rougher on Star Wars movies and TV shows than Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
No one's rougher on Marvel movies than Marvel movie fans, or DC movies than DC movie fans, or Doctor Who, like Doctor Who fans. It's like the fans seem to be the ones that are raising the most ruckus. And to some degree, I can understand that if this is something that you love, you have an emotional investment in it. But it isn't like Hollywood can't make good movies. And I have fallen for this myself. I feel like I've gone down this rabbit hole also in thinking that Hollywood executives are just stupid people who do not understand how to make movies, that they just have a bunch of money, but they're not creatives. And the truth is, when you think about it, in a real sense, we're both on the same side because they want to give us movies we want to watch and we want them to give us movies we want to watch. We have right now, I think, with Hollywood, a very toxic relationship because of the fact that we're so quick to criticize, and Hollywood has gotten to the point where they're trying to chase us down to find out what it is we want. And all we have given them is criticism, and we troll them on occasions. Sometimes they're like, what are you into? Hey, well, why don't you put Morbius back out? And that's not a help to anybody. And I would say the perfect illustration of Hollywood trying to give the audience what they want, that had to be Warner Brothers and the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Mm-hmm. They put in hundreds of millions of dollars to give us a 4-hour cut of the Justice League, and basically put it out with no possible way of making the money back because they put it out on HBO Max, so they're not going to sell tickets. That wasn't enough. We want Snyderverse movies forever now. And they paid a price for it, a huge price. I think not just in the pocketbooks, but the fact that in a real sense, you gave the audience what you thought they wanted and what they said that they wanted, and they basically tore up Warner Brothers for it. They did. And we do have some really good movies coming out, but at the same time, I've also noticed that a lot of these good movies that have come out that people have been excited about, I don't see those studios who have put these movies out putting out a poll asking the audience what they want. Now, I feel like, yeah, obviously you can't completely ignore the audience and you have to be able to put stuff out that people enjoy. But there's an old saying, what's a camel? It's a horse put together by a committee. And I feel like that's a big problem that we have in Hollywood right now. We weren't trying to tell Hollywood what we wanted. They would give us movies. We would, with our dollars, vote on the ones that we liked. And if we didn't think it was our kind of movie or thought it wasn't going to be a good movie, then we didn't go. And that was the extent of it. But times are different now. Here's the best example. We're in front of microphones. This was something that 15 years ago would not have been possible. But everyone has a voice now. Not that we're the biggest podcast in the world. We're not like Joe Rogan numbers, but then who is but Joe Rogan? But, when I look at the different countries that are listening to us, literally all over the world, which is nice, but at the same time, if somebody like us, if we can do that, and then really anyone can do that, anyone can put out a podcast and put out their opinions or whatever, it's like, now everyone has a voice, and that's democratic. And I think there are positive things about that. But at the same time, when everyone has a voice, then no one really does. It becomes
noise.
Yeah, it does. And as someone who is a creative, I know that when I'm creating something, I'm not taking a poll before I write a poem or a short story or working on my novel. I do ask the advice of other creators, other writers, but I don't know how well I would be able to write something if I'm just waiting for feedback from readers. In the creative process, there has to be some autonomy. And I feel that maybe the biggest issue that we have in Hollywood is there is this movement right now in a lot of Hollywood studios and television studios of trying to chase down what the audience wants, when really the hallmark to me of what makes great art is when you give the audience something wonderful they didn't even know they wanted. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the first Deadpool. We didn't know we needed a Deadpool movie until we got one, and holy crap, did we need it. But we're also at a situation where we used to trust that Hollywood, if they put out a movie, it was going to be decent. It may not be to our taste, but it was going to be to somebody's taste. Mm-hmm. And now I think that they've spent so much time trying to chase down the audience that they've missed the plot. There's no reason why some of the movies that have been released recently should have ever been released. Not to drag Madam Web out to beat that dead horse, because, again, what more can I say about it? But Sony's in a situation, they're not like a Marvel Studios that has streaming.
They can afford.
Yeah, that they can't. What streaming service do they have that they can put a movie out that they'll be able to make any kind of money back on this at all? A lot of movies that have gotten beaten up aren't really bad movies. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people about the Marvels that they said, oh, I heard it was terrible, but I watched it and I thought it was great.
Right.
And so even the audience is not sure about what they want, or they'll listen to somebody else's opinion on it and they'll go with it. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. But let me ask you, I mean, we go out and watch movies on Tuesdays, and sometimes you catch stuff on television. How do you feel Hollywood has served as far as bringing content that you enjoy, that you like to watch? How much do you feel like they're in step, at least to some degree, to giving you movies that you want to watch?
I've been going to see the movies on Tuesday nights and everything. I've enjoyed what I've seen, but I lean more toward the series and as of late, and I get more excited about getting to see those. Just hearing that The Boys has its release date coming out, and I just finished True Detective, and that was an amazing show, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And I guess that is all part of the Hollywood wheel, that maybe they don't know how to give us 100 minutes anymore. Everything has to be epic, which is why the series are so good. We can stretch out the time, but we've lost that short form entertainment. We can't fit such a good story into 100 minutes anymore. It has to be 4 hours. It has to be 5 hours of the Snyder Cut. It has to be these big, long, huge 2 and 3 hour movies. And without intermissions, looking back at Ten Commandments,
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, and all the Rodgers and Hammerstone movies had intermissions, and maybe that was helpful to them. Maybe audiences were just different back then, because I think before the 60s, people didn't really even come in before the movie had started and take a seat. That was a big deal for Hitchcock. He wanted people to be there through the whole show, see the movie from the very beginning. And maybe we're just not, and maybe that's something we need to get back to short form entertainment. But yeah, as far as I get excited about some movies, with us, it's more like going out with the group and being with the people that I care about, that I love. That makes me enjoy a movie so much more. And so that's the experience that I like. But as far as movies, I like them, but I don't get excited and look forward to them like I once did.
Yeah, I certainly do understand that. I do agree with you in that a lot of the movie-going experience is going out with your friends, and it's a different experience when you do that. Especially post-COVID, I feel like a lot of these communal meetings with people, getting together with your friends, having fun, whether it's going out to see a movie or going out to eat or getting together to play games or whatever it is.
Like when we went to see The Iron Claw, sitting between you, who had your own experience in professional wrestling, and then sitting beside our friend Carrie, whose father was a professional wrestler,
Right.
and getting to talk to you during the movie and seeing both of you, how you react to it. I loved that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always said that as much as I love horror movies, nothing beats the experience of seeing a horror movie in a theater full of people.
Yes.
And as much as you might enjoy sitting at home watching a horror movie, it's just not the same. And I feel that Hollywood movies are best viewed around your friends, other people, having that emotion. It's just like going to a live musical event. You can listen to something on the radio, but being in a crowd of people listening to live music, nothing beats it. And I feel that should be the first step. And a lot of people have, again, especially with Madam Web and what's been going on, everyone has been weighing in on what does Hollywood need to do to turn things around. And for me as a writer, obviously the first thing that they need to do is they need to get back to story. And again, it seems like the screenwriter is the lowest person on the totem pole. Yeah. And they need to fix that, because great story is what's going to make people interested in movies. But you really do need to promote this idea of how much fun it is to go out to the theater and to see things on the big screen. They need to figure out a way of doing that. And you can definitely see in Disney this idea of pulling back from streaming and going back into theaters again. And that's something that I feel like COVID really did, was it took people out of theaters and watching at home. And yes, even if you have a massive 108-inch television at home with a 5.1 speaker sound system and you have Dolby Atmos sound, you're still watching it at home. And it's not the same experience as going to a theater and watching it. And somehow studios need to figure a way of making that appealing again. Because if they don't, trying to make movies for one person at a time, I feel like that's a losing proposition. Trying to figure out, how do I make a movie that someone sitting in their living room by themselves is going to enjoy? I don't feel like that's a sustainable model. I don't. I feel like we need the big event movies again. And I feel like Dune Part 2 is going to be one of those big event movies. People are really excited.
Are you going to dress in a still suit?
I don't know if I would fit in one of those. But I will say that with that and Deadpool 3 and the idea of going out and having fun in the movies, there has to be a return to that. There has to be this idea of going out to the theaters. And I understand that's an uphill battle. I understand that. But until we have this idea of going to the theater is fun, it's something to do with your friends and enjoy a movie. And I get it. Especially nowadays, it's a very expensive proposition.
Yeah.
It really is. And so maybe part of what studios and theaters need to do is figure out how to bring the cost of that a little bit lower if they can, in such a way that it becomes something more reasonable for people to want to do, that it's something that they can afford to do. Even if it's like a one night type of a thing, the theater we go to on Tuesdays, they do $5 movies.
Right.
Even if it's one day a week, but getting people back in the theaters and excited again, I feel like until they can figure out that, and it's going to take time. There's no quick fix to this, but getting people excited about the big movie experience and that idea of enjoying movies in the theater again, they need to figure that out. And I know it's much tougher now than, of course, when I was a kid. It was easy to get people in the theaters because once the movie left the theaters, you weren't going to see it again unless maybe there was an edited version on TV, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road. There wasn't video. There wasn't video cassettes. There wasn't any way of...
No Blockbuster.
None of that stuff. And so if you missed it in the theater, you just missed it. That was it. So there was a drive to go see it in the theater. And of course, now it's like we have access to everything. The irony of all of that is now that we have access to everything, we have access to nothing. Because there's just too much content at this point. You can't watch everything. I mean, there are television shows I still have not, I'm a season and a half into The Boys at this point, and that's it. That's as much as I've been able to do.
Uh-huh.
And I want to get back onto that again, but there's just so much content out there. And especially with COVID and the idea that maybe we would have to convert everything to streaming because people weren't going to be going out to theaters ever again. I think that really backfired. And I think what we're seeing as far as Hollywood movies coming out, I feel like we are suffering the brunt of that policy. This idea that it's more important to get stuff out on streaming. We have to find some streaming service so that we can get our stuff out because it's the only way people are ever going to watch movies again. And it's a model that's simply just not working. And it's not going to, and it's not sustainable. I feel like, in my opinion, they need to get people excited about going to movies again. And however they have to do that, they need to do that. They need to really concentrate on story again. And like you said, they need to figure out how to make movies lean and mean again. Although there are some movies that benefit from a 2-hour runtime. If it's a 2-hour story, fine. But being able to do a shorter film that's lean and mean and tight and has a good story that doesn't overstay its welcome, they need to be able to do that again. And I completely agree with that. But I also believe, and if Godzilla -1 didn't show this enough, they need to figure out that you don't have to spend $150 million to make a good movie.
Yeah, that was a fantastic movie, and the effects were fantastic, and the acting, it was just...
Yeah, it was a great film, and it didn't require a $100 million, $150 million, $200 million budget to make it. And Hollywood studios needs to figure out that they can make a good movie if they have a good story. And especially with the tools that we have nowadays, you don't need to spend a lot of money. I mean, you look everything, everywhere, all at once. I'm going to keep bringing that up. But the special effects for that movie were created by people who were watching YouTube videos about how to use Adobe. And it was an amazing film. It was incredible. But the tools are getting so much better now. And I'm hoping that studios don't get this idea in their head that now with AI, we can cut out the creatives and we don't need the creatives anymore. We can have AI write a script. We can have them do the special effects. Now that we have ChatGPT have come out with Sora, and this idea of with 2 prompts, like 2-sentence prompt, you can get realistic video. Yeah, that's an extremely powerful tool. But Hollywood has to understand that this does not get rid of the creatives. In fact, to my mind, Hollywood shouldn't be excited about these tools. They should be scared of them. Because what that does is it allows creatives to use those tools. And so it's the studio that becomes obsolete. Because studios make movies because they can afford those price tags. But with these tools, you don't need $100 million to make a movie. And if you take creatives out of the equation, they're just going to go off on their own and have access to the same tools, are going to be able to make their own stuff. And in a world where everyone has a microphone, everyone has a movie screen. And so honestly, like I said, I've been thinking about this a lot just because of Madam Web, because again, I watched it and I was confused. I was bewildered. But at the same time, I wondered how we got here. And I'm hoping for better days, we'll say. And they're coming. They're coming. Starting next week, I feel. And maybe that'll be where it turns around. But I guess we'll see.
Shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 211. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.